Hi, my name is Tara Aisha Willis, and I'm MCA's Associate Curator in Performance and Public Practice. I'm thrilled to welcome you to today's Music Talk with Justin Vivian Bond, in conversation with Jim Hodges. We are so lucky that we get to virtually travel to New York City today, specifically to Queens, to witness this conversation, art, and music. We also get to travel back in time a bit to when the video was originally shot in March of this year. So you'll hear Vivian and Jim talking about emerging from shelter-in-place orders for the first time, about now finished projects that were still being dreamed up then, and most of all, you'll be reminded of how far we've come from 2020 to the beginning of this year to now. You'll also be reminded of how much further we have to go, how much has been lost, and how much work there is to be done. I hope you come away feeling joyful, grounded, bittersweet, and emboldened, as I feel every time I hear these two artists speak about their artwork and their lives. We are deeply grateful to both Vivian and Jim for all the generosity, care, and thoughtfulness with which they have navigated their time with the MCA. We're also eternally grateful for our colleagues at the Kitchen in New York and at Queens Lab, Jim's studio, where this video was shot. They were fabulous collaborators and co-producers of this event, ensuring that Jim's sculptures look amazing and Vivian's music sounds stunning. It's a very special occasion to see that kind of creativity all in one place. We miss being together here in the theater, but one good thing about the virtual space is that it's easier to talk during the performance. So if you're watching from home, I strongly encourage you to ask questions, cheer, whistle, and holler in the chat box, where myself and MCA staff will be ready and waiting. You might even come across Vivian or Jim in the chat if you're lucky. But most of all, I hope you'll take this as a chance to witness the work together with your fellow audience members. And to those of you watching on site at the MCA, thank you for stopping by. Please also take advantage of the captions if you'd like, and if you have to dip out, don't worry, this video will be up online until November 27th. I hope you'll stop by again to finish watching. If you're viewing online, you'll see the link to the program notes come up in the chat. If you're at the museum right now, just look around for the sign with the QR code to access them. The program notes give you a bit more information about the artists and their work, and you can find a link there to the soundtrack playlist that the artists have made together, mining their decades of friendship and collaboration to explore resistance, power, and tenderness through music. Thank you so much for watching, and enjoy.
The new depression, so why am I filled with glee? Everybody's coming down quickly, now they can all join me. The living, the swell of music, the feeling of being free, just about everything. My body's my economy. And yesterday someone said, honey, you'd better be scared, but see, they never checked on me before, and that's all right with me. So bring on some flight of fancy, bring on a magic decree, bring on a high-heeled tranny, bring on fantasy. the thunder of your world crashing down. Brothers and sisters smiling, lying on the ground. Everybody's talking about Jesus. Well, heaven's in the palm of your hand. Reach in your pocket and stroke it. It's there at your command. Can't you feel the magic's growing? The earth, she breathes with ease. Little babies, they are knowing. Intervention can't buy peace. So bring on some flight of fancy. Bring on a magic decree. Bring on a high-heel tranny. Bring on fantasy. Bring on the ascended masters. Bring on ecology. Take what you need and give a little back. That's the new economy. Take what you need and give a little back. That's the new economy. Take what you need and give a little back. That's the new economy. There we go. Hello.
Welcome back, Vivian.
Thank you.
Oh my God, that was amazing.
Thank you. I feel like I'm on a TV show with my favorite host.
Oh, thank you, Vivian. It's obviously an honor to be here sitting with you and to have you here in Queen's Lab again.
It's so magical here.
It's a space for what you do. It's for singing for sure, and for filling it. And which as you did. I'm a little nervous, Vivian, so forgive me for being.
Don't worry about it. Just be what you are.
Thank you. Do you want? I mean, there's so much I want to ask you, and there's an awful lot awful lot to cover in terms of your practice. But yesterday we were talking a little bit about not trying to imitate singers that you were listening to as a young person, but could you talk a little bit about what you said yesterday about the people first of all? Like you mentioned Barbra Streisand, but
when I was young, I grew up in a church, and that's where I first learned songs and things, and the kind of music I would see on TV and stuff. I was looking for certain kinds of voices, and so I would go to the library and check out records because we didn't have a lot of money. And my father had a great record collection, but a very small one, and it was his record collection. But because of him, I learned about Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and some amazing people. But when I went to the library, I checked out a record by Melanie, who and Melanie sang, "Candles in the Rain," and she was the Brand New Key Girl, which I love that song on the radio. But her records with Ruby Tuesday and When I'm in My Mind, I'm Going to Carolina, and her like passion, and it wasn't a beautiful voice; it was a voice that was full of emotion. And so I was really into singers that made me really feel something. So that was my goal. And my favorite singers were Marianne Faithfull, Patti Smith, and then later Diamanda Galás. And I liked, I didn't anticipate ever being a songwriter. But I knew that if I sang other people's songs properly, I could take the emotion that they made me feel and the songs made me feel, and almost like be that person in order to really be myself. You know, like I would take the impressions that made me see things and gave me knowledge about what life and what my life and what my possibilities were, and then like incorporate them in order to translate them into my own genuine feelings. And so, yeah, I always feel like whenever I'm singing a song that I fell in love with when someone else sang it, I'm like the shadow self of that person. So we become one, and then it becomes something original. So I think, yeah, that's what I do. I kind of, I channel the influences, and I always feel like if you meet somebody and all of a sudden you jive, then the energy that you create with the other person creates something entirely new and powerful. And that's what I look for in relationships with other people. And so something that enhances but doesn't diminish.
It's interesting because what that effect, if you will, of witnessing, being an audience member and hearing your performances and seeing your work manifest, live, there is that connection that's made there too. I mean, what you embody or how you become the music, and especially your selection of specific songs in how you compose an exhibition, a performance, a night, for instance. Would you talk a little bit about your selecting songs? How you are brought to songs? I mean, first of all, I know that you've been doing this all of your life. I know that, and maybe not everyone knows this, but from I think a very young age, you knew that you were a singer.
I knew I was a performer, and I knew I loved singing, and I love. I wouldn't say that singing is the thing that I do best, but it's the thing. Maybe it is now, but it certainly wasn't. Like my talents are all developed. I was not a native singer. I mean,
Sure.
before my voice changed when I was a kid, and I had that that kid soprano voice. I just loved the way my voice sounded. So when my voice changed as a trans person, and all of a sudden it was very different, that was a constant negotiation. I mean, I don't think people really talk about the voice break that boys have when they go through puberty, and even boys that aren't transgender. It's a real moment, and it's a life-changing moment, and you are heard in a totally different way after that. And so for me, I always loved female singers. I sounded like them when I was young, and then it changed, and I had to figure out a way back to it. And so I think, again, it was people like Melanie and Marianne Faithfull who weren't so concerned about being beautiful or sounding feminine, even though my favorite voice of all times is Judy Collins, who has that beautiful soprano voice. But her voice reminds me of my grandmother, that kind of soaring soprano that, takes you in your heart and lifts you up. But I knew I was never going to be like that ever again. But so when I first, to go to your other question about choosing material and stuff, the first cabaret show I did was when I was in college, and I wasn't quite sure what to do. And my friend Victoria Leacock, who was a New York kid who grew up her godmother was Maxine Andrews, and she was obsessed with Peter Allen, and she got to see Liza live. And so she had seen a lot of cabaret, which is something that was a fantasy in my world, but I'd never actually seen too much of it. And so I was like, I don't know, I got this gig, and I'm supposed to sing songs, and I don't know what. She was like, you need to have like a theme for the evening. I was like, okay, well, what should the theme be? She's like, what about love? I was like, oh yeah, love, because I was 18 at the time, and I thought love sounded great. And so I did this evening of songs that I loved that were about love, and it was I still have the actual set list from that show, and it was funny. The songs, or I still like the songs, but when you first start singing, you're singing all kinds of songs that you always wanted to sing. Yeah. And you don't necessarily know if they're the right songs for you or if they're appropriate for your age or for who you are, but you just have to kind of get them out of your system. And then you find out what kind of works and what you feel like begins to feel more authentic to yourself. So it's a real experiment when you first start. But now, one of the great things I love about my years-long residency at Joe's Pub is that I can do 5 shows a year if I want, 5 different shows or 3 or however many. And each show, depending on what I'm feeling and what's going on in the world, I can cater the song selection to really be what I have to say. And so it's really about as simple as that.
Right.
And what I may be going through at the time, like a couple years ago for spring, I did a song that was all, I usually sing women's songs. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do songs by men in this show. And it was spring. So I did songs mostly about songs that were recorded by guys that I had fantasies about when I was young, the sexy rock stars that I thought were hot. And so I did I forget what the name of that show was, but I did Andy Gibb and David Cassidy. And and I got to sing, bring that sort of sexy adolescent boy energy into my routine and flirt with people in a way that I don't normally flirt with people. So that was really fun. And, and then more serious themes at other times. So it's a great way to almost bring your personal journal onto the stage and sing what you're feeling for people.
I think that it's one of your many talents, one of your many gifts, if you will, of where you are composing experiences for your audience in a way that really at times can be quite it's quite a ride. I mean, I've seen you obviously a number of times, and across a spectrum of locations and venues and types of performance as well. Yours and then of course your collaborations, and then film, and I missed the opera, but you're involved in many art forms, performant art forms. But I think that Justin Vivian Bond, I think that everyone who loves you, of course loves you across the board, but everyone is always excited about what will occur, because we know that you're going to sing, but we also know that there's going to be at least one moment where your character, I don't know if it's the right word to describe, I guess where you're from that place of authority and also I think comfort that you break into. So you create a space in culturally or something, a critique, if you will, of what's happening. And maybe it's in the room that's happening, or if it's happening outside, or if it's happening, within the bigger culture itself. Could you talk a little bit about improvisation and the spontaneity in which you bring?
Well, that's the magic of cabaret. That's why cabaret is my, number one chosen art form, because you are in a room with people in real time and you're not pretending to be anywhere else. There's no fourth wall. You're there on the day that you're there. I mean, for the most part, you're there on the day that you're there, and you're communicating with the people in the room, or, now we're communicating with people outside of the room, but this isn't a cabaret performance. But I did do those live streams during the spring and summer of the lockdown, where I didn't have the crowd in my house, but I was communicating to my crowd,
Right.
my audience, because I know who my audience is.
Right.
So I was able to do it so that I was really communicating with my people in a way that I needed to communicate with them, that was denied me. Usually when there's like a period of trauma in my life, I can work it out, or in the culture, I can work it out on stage with my community, you know? So like when I started doing cabaret professionally for real, full time in like 1990, I was myself, and it was like about being young and queer and beautiful in San Francisco. But then as it got darker and darker with AIDS,
Right.
I created Kiki so that I could play a character that was less vulnerable than myself. And so I could really get into what was going on. And as people were dying and as people were out on the streets protesting, and I could channel that energy and that rage, and my audience could come to a place where it was like safe, and we all could experience our grief or our anger or whatever together in a room, and look around and see that there are other people who felt the same way
Right.
that you felt. And that's always been, as a queer performer, one of the most essential parts of that makes what I do, I feel important. It's for us, you know?
Right.
And I've never really thought about any other audience other than my queer audience as far as appealing to them.
Right.
So then when 9/11 happened, I was supposed to do a show that night, and I couldn't fathom that the show would be canceled, because I was like, we need to be together, and we couldn't, because of course the city was shut down and the staff couldn't come in. But within a week, I was on stage,
Right.
and we were processing that together,
Right.
and then even for my holiday show, which took place at the Westbeth Theater Complex, the WTC, which just so happened to have the same initials as the World Trade Center, There's a Stranger in the Manger. That show was still talking about what we were feeling then, you know?
Right.
And so it was so strange for this virus to come along, and a pandemic. And unlike when it was the pandemic of the 90s, we couldn't sit together. We
Right.
couldn't strategize and comfort one another. We were all isolated. And so it was really, really just this imperative that I somehow figured out a way to like put the camera on selfie and stick it in a little thing. And my housemate played piano, and we were able to start to work through that with people.
Right.
Because that's the thing about art. I put the hashtag queer art saves lives,
Right.
because I truly believe that queer artists have to be queer artists, because what else would we do? And queer people need to see queer art because it saves our souls. It gives us a place to know where we fit in and we belong, and that there are other people that, you know, we criticize each other, obviously, but we are all speaking the same language from the same place of trauma or joy or sexiness, or, you know, whatever happens to be necessary in that moment.
Right. I've always thought it was interesting about the construction of audience, like that artists are select their audience in a way. It's nice to hear. I mean, it's great to hear you say that. I think that the model that you provide, but also the nexus or the location of content and emotion that you invite us into as a kind of the vehicle or the vessel of that content is such a generous and I mean useful, helpful, transformative it's a kind of gathering, and
Right.
there's something. And I know that you've
I'm a space holder. I think of
Holder.
myself as a space holder.
Right.
Because when my girlfriends, I had much more radical girlfriends.
Right.
Because I could be seen as radical by some people, but obviously the way I was raised and the person that I am, I'm a little bit more reticent. But my outrageousness became almost like an act of rebellion, but it was also an act of homage and memory, memento mori, if you will, because so many of my girlfriends that were just so outrageous and fun and courageous and strong, they were the risk takers.
Right.
And many of those were the risk takers were the ones that died, when I was young. And so I felt like I was the receptacle of their energy and their spirit, and it was my duty in a way to like hold that space for them to like come through me in a way. And so that's always been part of my conscious, I guess, drive to hold space and create space for the people that have left and the people that are coming. I'm just one little queen in a long lineage of queens. And so,
Right.
so certain things that I don't know, like I came to New York thinking my only goal for Kiki and Herb was to get them into an off-Broadway theater so that there would be this like thing. That was how far I wanted to go with that. And I wanted to get on with my own thing. Like I never thought of Kiki and Herb as my own thing.
Right.
Bizarrely.
Because you're sharing it with Kenny?
No, because it was this character that I
see.
created to hide behind. And so, in a way, and she became so loved that, and I enjoyed it, but eventually it became kind of a trap because it was keeping me from doing what I felt I needed to do. But when they said, oh, well, where would you like to play next? And I was like, I don't really want to do Kiki anymore. Well, if you could play somewhere, where would it be? And I was like, Carnegie Hall, thinking that would never, ever happen. And then they said, we got Carnegie Hall. And so then I had to do it, obviously. But I literally didn't want to. I wanted to go on. And I had this crush on this insane person in London. And they were like, you have to do it. And I was like, well, I'll do it, but only if you come. And they were like, okay, I'll come over.
Thank God for that person.
And they came. If he had said no, I would never have done that. I never would have done Broadway, and I never would have been nominated for a Tony. But the reason I did it was to impress some idiot that I had the hots for in London. That's why I do most things at the end of the day. But
the show in London on the boat was the Kiki and Herb show, and on the river was incredible. By the way,
that was the high point, I think, of the most fun I ever had in my life. I mean, everything was just kind of cooking. And,
it was great.
It was really fun. And it was not a theater. It was on this boat. We played at this place called the HMS President, which was a boat, for those who don't know, a boat that was moored on the Thames. And the show was called Kiki and Herb Mount the President. And it was right after George Bush had been elected. And so we were very... as were many people, less happy with America at that time because of the Gulf War and all of that stuff. And so we did this show, and after the show, we would have a dance party on the boat, and we got all of our favorite DJs. And so basically every night was just this wild party in the summer in London on this boat. And that was definitely one of the most exciting times of my life. And I was in love with more than one person, so I had lots to do.
It's great the way those relationships, good or bad, however they end up, but the influence, how when we open ourselves up to that kind of casuality or even weather, if you will, that we let ourselves blow in that direction, and the permission we can let ourselves have, as you gave yourself, thankfully for your friend to say, you got to do this.
Right.
I mean, come on, that was that was remarkable. And I understand I think the one knows a kind of cul-de-sac, right? When one's is in a cul-de-sac, you're starting to, you know where you are.
Right. Well, hopefully you'd figure it out.
Right.
Because I was going down a dark road at that time because I wasn't doing what I wanted. And so I was doing a lot of drinking and a lot of drugs because I was not where I wanted to be.
Right.
And that made it possible for me to be there and just talk to people. And that was the great lesson, I guess, to learn that, the reason I was doing drugs was because I was someplace I did not want to be. And so I had to change that. Unfortunately, I was able to. And I stopped doing Kiki and Herb. And then shortly thereafter, I stopped doing drugs because I was doing what I wanted. And I was living where I wanted. And I wanted to be present and enjoy it. And when I was 44 years old when I got my first apartment.
Amazing.
And I was like, I'm not bringing drugs into this apartment. This is my sacred space.
Right.
And so after that, it changed in that regard. And so if I start to feel the urge to be self-destructive, I know I'm not doing what I want, and I'm not where I want to be. And even during this whole winter lockdown of desperate loneliness and thinking I have made all the wrong decisions. I don't have any love in my life. I don't have an intimate, ongoing relationship on a daily basis with anyone. I still was not that. I didn't get to that point. I was like, well, this is temporary, and I am fortunate enough to be in my house that I love with my cats. But if you're in that place where you really are someplace you don't want to be, and that's the only way to escape, that was my experience of drugs.
Right. Well, it was. I remember when it was announced that you were retiring Kiki. It was. It was, of course. It was a shock, and also I think a big loss. But at the same time, it was like, oh, this is fantastic, because Vivian, of course, isn't disappearing. The character, and let's see how Vivian emerges from that character.
Right, because I had to rediscover who I as a person actually was too.
Right.
And that was 2008, and by 2011 is when I had always identified as transgender.
Right.
But it's when I really started to assert it, because I felt it was important. It was important for my art because I wasn't hiding behind a character. One of the things that made me create Kiki was because I was perceived as a drag queen by gay men in the community, and they would just treat me like you would treat a thing, like a drag queen or whatever. And I was like, I'm just a person. And it was too much. And I felt so vulnerable that I was like, well, if they want a crazy fucked up queen, I'll make one for them.
Right.
And I made that character to hide behind. And so I didn't have to really address publicly who I was or what I was going through or what I felt as far as my transness. It was all about the characters and Kiki and Herb and promo for that. So it took me a while to find the language to interact with the public about being trans and being myself and being
it's amazing having, as a performer, one is evolving in the public while you are gathering audience and creating, but you're still, it's quite, the vulnerability is pronounced, and it's acute. But at the same time, and I guess that's what makes a performer.
Right, but I feel like I always felt that way.
Right.
Because I was expected to play certain roles that I didn't necessarily feel comfortable with from the time I was a kid, being told what I wasn't. You're not this, you're not that. Well, actually, I might be, And so when I was in 6th grade, I guess it was, and it was the first week of school, and so I would have been at 10 or 11, and I'm in line, and I hear some guy say, I heard he sucked a guy's dick once, which wasn't true. I'd only blown on one because they asked for a blowjob, and I was like, and so I was all of a sudden, I felt like I was paranoid after that, because I didn't know who that guy was that I heard talking about me. And then I mentioned it to my best girlfriend, and she said, oh yeah, I heard my parents talking about that at dinner one night. And I was like, oh my God. So then everybody knew I was always aware of being watched. And so I always had a kind of a veneer
Right.
of who I allowed people or what I allowed people to see in order to protect myself, you know, forever. And that, I guess, is that's also why getting behind those singers and those people who looked so gorgeous and glamorous and in charge of themselves and creative, were I would try them on like outfits to grow into who I was.
It's beautiful to hear you say about, I mean, just the way of utilizing as a form even, or a material, one's sense of insecurity or vulnerability or being identified or being watched, and utilizing that in a way to take power and to create form out of it, which you certainly have.
Because I could feel safe if I was drawing.
Right.
And if I would draw the model who I did in my model myself in high school, Karen Graham, the Estee Lauder model, I would just sit and draw her, and it was like a meditation where when I was drawing her, none of that stuff was in my head. I was just looking at this beautiful face and drawing it, and it gave me a sense of calm. Or the movie stars that I would draw, or, you know, a picture of my great grandmother or whoever I was drawing at that time would be like, when I was doing that, I felt calm and safe. When I was singing, I felt calm and safe.
Right.
And even when I was in front of an audience, I would feel calm and safe because I was in charge. And I was also directing what they were seeing, and in a certain way, what they were thinking, and controlling how they viewed certain subjects, like contextualizing my life, queerness, whatever,
Right.
for the people that were watching. And I didn't have to hear what they thought.
And they always are loving you. I mean, and even they may not be thinking what you're. I mean, they may not be there always, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone walk out of your shows. But I'm sure that
They have. They have. When we used to do this thing about Polly Klaus in San Francisco, and I would be on mushrooms when I was performing. I'd be shrooming, and I'd be, you know, I went, it was the week that she died, and I was like, let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, Polly Klaus is dead in a ditch somewhere. Oof. And these people got up, and of course, as it turned out, the next day they discovered she was dead in a ditch somewhere. Oof. And people were like, freaked out, and I was freaked out too. But the people walked out, and I was standing next to the stairwell, and I would perform there. And so they'd go to the other end of the room and go down the stairs, but you could see, like, the stairwell was open. So I used to do this part as Kiki where I would hold a handful of steak knives and talk about how she had stabbed her ex-husband in the arm. And so I grabbed this handful of steak knives, and I started screaming, "Yeah, get out and stay out." And I threw the steak knives down the stairs where they had been walking down the stairs. Now, I knew they were no longer on the stairs, but nobody else did. So, and the bar below, because we were in the restaurant above the bar, all of a sudden, all these steak knives came raining down into the stairwell, so they didn't allow me to have steak knives in my show anymore.
Kiki's here tonight. Leave the steak knives in the drawer.
I don't think you're, you know, at least back then, if you're doing confrontational theater about queerness and AIDS and social commentary, especially in that conservative era, when we were being so really, I mean, we were dying and people didn't care.
Sure.
I feel like you, at that point, you needed to have people walking out. I don't think I have as many people walking out now because I'm not there to annoy people. Unless I want to.
Watch out. Vivian, I know you're going to sing some more songs for us.
Yes.
I think if you want to, would it be a good time now to sing a song?
Yes.
All right. And what do you want to say? What you're going to sing?
Well,
I should
introduce the musicians first of all.
Your show.
Matt Ray is my musical director on piano, and he does our arrangements. And Nathan Carrera is on guitar, and Claudia Chopek on violin. And the song we're about to do for you is "Woman in the Moon," which is a song from the Barbra Streisand version of "A Star Is Born." And about a year or so ago, I decided I wanted to do this show called "A Star Is Born." because I remembered when I was in 7th or 8th grade, this other gay kid didn't know, obviously we weren't relating to each other as gay kids, but we were
Right.
we were the freaks in the classroom. And he used to do this comic strip because I was obsessed with Barbra Streisand.
Right.
And this was the 70s, and she was the Lady Gaga of that era.
Sure.
And so he used to do these comic strips that he would draw when we were in class and we were bored, called The Adventures of Chipra. Because my nickname as a kid was Chip Bond, Chippy Bond when I was little. And so he did The Adventures of Chipra, where he would draw me in the Superman t-shirt that she wore, and it would be me with my 70s feathered hair and Barbra Streisand's nose, which I was like, when I was really young and Sandy Duncan was my obsession, I was like, please God, let me have a brain tumor so I can be like Sandy Duncan. And then I was like, please God, let me have a big nose like Barbra Streisand. It's so beautiful. And, I wanted to, anyway, so he drew me The Adventures of Chipra. So I decided to do this show, which was like 3 generations, 3 queer icons, 1 movie, A Star is Born. Judy Garland was a generation,
Right.
Of queer men. Barbra Streisand was a generation of queer men, and Lady Gaga. They were the icons of those 3 generations. So I decided to do a show about how I worked my way through, like I said, or like layering them all together, layering them onto myself, and creating this autobiographical night called A Star is Born. And this song, Woman in the Moon, is one of the songs from that. I was warned as a child of 13 not to act too strong. Try to look like you belong, but don't push, girl. Save your time and trouble. Don't misbehave. I was raised in a know-you-don't world, overrun with rules. Memorize your lines and move as directed. That's an age-old story. Everybody knows that's a worn-out song. But you and I are a-changing. We're changing that tune. We're learning new rhythms from the woman. I said the woman in the moon. Little sister, little brother, keep on pushing. Don't believe a word about things you heard about. Asking too much too soon. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause they can hold back the tide, but they can never hold the woman in the moon. I believe in the best of both worlds, mixing old and new. Recognizing change is seldom expected. As I long suspected, they believe that strange is a word for wrong, but not in my song. 'Cause you and I are a-changing. We're changing that tune. We're learning new rhythms I said the woman in the moon, little sister, little brother, keep on pushing. Don't believe a word about things you've heard about. Asking too much too soon. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause they can hold back the tide, but they can never hold the woman. I said the woman in the Yeah, so that's from A Star Is Born, the Barbra Streisand version. And well, we have another song. I might as well sing it while we're up here. This was a song from a show we did called, it was something, The Canyon. What was that show called? Do you remember? Ladies of the Canyon. It was called Ladies of the Canyon? Was it? I guess it was Ladies of the Canyon. I was doing all songs about Laurel, that were originated in Laurel Canyon. And this song was by a lesbian by the name of Judy Sill, who was the first person that was signed by David Geffen. And I think, was it you that taught me about Judy Sill? Because weren't you a big Judy Sill fan? And so I was in San Francisco in this hotel room, and at that time I was playing in, I think I might have been doing my Karen Carpenter show or something at this venue called the Raz Room in San Francisco, and I was getting ready, and I put Judy Sill on, and I heard this song, and I think you're the reason I did this song for the first time, and it's called The Kiss. Love rising from the mist, promise me this and only this, holy breath touching me like a wind song, sweet communion of a kiss, sun sifting through the gray, enter in, reach me with a ray, silently swooping down, just to show me how to give my heart away. Once a crystal choir appeared while I was sleeping and called my name, and when they came down near, saying dying is done, then a new song was sung until somewhere we breathed as one, and still I hear their whisper, stars bursting in the sky, hear the sad nova's dying cry, shimmering memory, come and hold fly. Sun sifting through the gray, enter in, reach me with a ray, silently swooping down, just to show me how to give my heart away. Lately sparkling hosts come fill my dreams, descending on fiery beams. I've seen them come clear down where our poor bodies lay, touch us gently and say, gonna wipe all your tears away. And still I hear their whisper, love rising from the mist. Promise me this and only this, holy breath touching me like a wind song, sweet communion of a kiss. Thank you.
Wow.
That
Beautiful.
song.
Oh my God.
Yesterday, when I sang the part about dying is done and a new. I've been so emotional this last few weeks because dying isn't done yet, but it's been such a time of that. And so to hear that lyric and think, we will be singing that hopefully before too long. So it wrecked me yesterday.
Thank you for bringing it to all of us, and to mention Judy Sills, of course, who had such a horrible, short, incredibly brilliant, amazing talent, and didn't make it very old. And the last year, I can't imagine being a performer, being so born to be that placeholder, as you said, you call yourself, and to be so connected to that experience and to be creating art live, that transmission and the reception of it is that sparking, conduit or circuit that gets connected. Mm-hmm. That to be with for the last year, to be really, I know you did some performances where you felt like you were talking to your audience, but to not hear clapping.
I don't care about the clapping.
I do though. I mean
it's a release.
But to not have the aliveness of the sounds, and I don't know, it's not a big deal, but it's just something that's like just those little nuances of change. But how did you? It may not be, you may not want to talk about it, but could you talk a little bit about maybe your experience? And I feel like we're maybe seeing, some daylight, and we're getting vaccinated now, and there's promise, and after the plague came the Renaissance, and I feel personally with my practice, I feel incredibly inspired. I think it's been a time of retreat, which is not unusual for artists, I
No,
think.
it's a good thing for artists.
Yeah, so could you talk a little bit maybe if you want to, but also maybe there's other things that I want to talk to you about. First of all, after that question.
Okay.
But
What was great about it was a really learning experience because I've always wanted to figure out how to be an artist with camera and television or film or whatever. I didn't get a lot of experience with that, so I learned how to communicate with an audience that wasn't present.
right.
And I got better at it as the time went on. So it was a really great learning experience for me. But also, I feel like when you're in an audience, the being able to like clap and express yourself and have that communal experience with the other people and to show the way you appreciate an artist in person, it's a great gift for the artist, but it's my gift as an artist is that people show up and listen.
Right.
I don't care about the applause, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, it's nice. I mean, when I got those huge standing ovations after my show at Carnegie Hall, I will tell you, it felt pretty good. That I'll never forget that moment. I'll never forget the moment I was exiting the stage at Carnegie Hall the last time after the first concert, and I just waved at my mom in the audience, and that was like one of the most
Beautiful,
amazing moments of my life, period. But the experience of being an artist during lockdown was interesting too, because I had an art exhibition, which I wasn't quite sure about when I had said, we had talked about it, we hadn't confirmed it.
Right.
And so as soon as the lockdown started, I was like, let's just confirm this date. It was the end of August. I was like, we'll be out by then, but I don't know if there will be performing going on. So in July, I sat down and I started painting these eyes. And I named the show 69 Witch Eyes, so I would have a goal to get to 69, which I ended up doing, I think, 66. But so I sat for all of July and August inside my house and painted every day. And that was wonderful. That was really healing because it was, again, like what I was saying before. I just focused and meditated, and it really calmed me, and it gave me a sense of purpose. I mean, I had a vitamin D deficiency for sure, but I sat in my house all summer and did those paintings, and that got me really back in touch with another part of myself. Then came this sort of like November, which I go down in December and November. As soon as the clocks turn back, I'm immediately less of a person. And I'm so excited because this weekend the clocks spring ahead. So look out, world. But it was good for me, I think. And it helped. And it's also an interesting side note is like, if you have gender dysphoria and you're worried about how you present your gender, try thinking about it if the only person you're presenting your gender to are your cats. I was like, oh no, I'm not a man, I'm not a woman, I'm not non-binary. I'm basically a big hairless cat at this point, because they were the people I related to every day. But it was a trip. Like, why shave? Why get dressed? Why put on lipstick? Why get a shower? Who sees it? Who cares?
Right.
And that's an interesting place to be because you're not concerned about your body anymore.
It's fascinating. I mean, that I think that everyone's story, obviously, in that kind of solitude, forced solitude, brought us to places that we hadn't considered possibly. I do think that artists are natural isolators, or certainly natural, distancers.
You have to be in order to make art.
Yeah. Could you
Or to think about art that you're going to make.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's also, it's interesting because you're talking about finding a place to occupy, or the invention of the performing persona that allows you to navigate freely with liberty in your life is, I think, is where I think a shared kind of location within artists, and that we establish, we create that zone of absolute freedom. I'm wondering if you the eye drawings that your show that you had this last summer. Could you talk a little bit about your selection again, your kind of curating of those specific eyes and who they are and that project?
Yeah. Well, and before I do that, I'll just say that when I was doing those lockdown performances, I was doing in the character of Auntie Glam, who I wanted to do a character instead of basically, for the most part, occasionally I'd be closer to a version of myself, depending, if it was like, there was so much going on also during that time.
Sure.
So I might plan a set and then there would be riots and people would be murdered. And
Right.
I'd be like, I can't do this set. You want to be a place where the people that are watching can come and relax and kind of have a drink with their people would get dressed up and send me pictures of themselves watching the show and having drinks, and they turn it into a weekly event, which was so great. But then you didn't want to be frivolous or act like you weren't concerned about what was going on. So
Right.
it was a real tightrope to walk, and that character helped me be joyful because I had that joyous, big character to play. But anyway, so when it came time to do the eyes, I had started doing these witch eyes around the time that the loser took office, and the loser, and they were witch eyes to protect you from evil chodes that I would sell at my shows. I would do these little watercolors 4x4. And when it was time to think about, and they were for people to put like an evil eye to protect their house. And so when it was time to do the show with Deb at Amp Gallery in Provincetown, she was like, well, why don't you do your witch eyes? And I was like, well, I didn't want to just do that. I was thinking about all the different things that I could possibly do for the show. But then I thought, okay, I'm going to do these witch eyes. And I was watching this YouTube Dick Cavett show where he was interviewing Truman Capote. And especially during the beginning of lockdown, I was just watching a lot of Depression era movies and musicals to see like when all the unemployment was happening and how they pop culture negotiated the Depression and all of that shock back then. So I was watching a lot of those movies. But then I started watching these things and I saw Truman Capote talking about this show that Tennessee Williams had just put on, Closed for a Summer Hotel, that had just opened on Broadway, and he was savaged by the critics. And at this point, I think Truman Capote and Tennessee Williams were no longer close. They had a rift. But Truman Capote went on this rant about how critics treated the greatest living American playwright and how it was because it was like they would call him frivolous, all these different code words for gay and camp, and that it was. And I have had so much of my work, especially in the Kiki and Herb years, dismissed as camp, which I would always say, well, if camp isn't dangerous, why do people kill people for being camp? Why is it so closely monitored? Why is it such a threat? Why does it have to be trivialized and put forth in this way that just like undercuts
Dismissive,
it? Yeah, dismisses it. And so Truman Capote's beautiful oration in support of Tennessee Williams made me immediately go and do Truman Capote's eye. And then I was like, okay, I had been doing abstract eyes, or I'd been doing eyes of people who I admired or whatever. And I was like, I'm going to do eyes in this period where we're all feeling so vulnerable and we're all so isolated, and it was like this horrible, we've been living in this period where extremists are salting the common ground. They're just out there salting it. Like any place where we can all meet, they're just sort of trying to destroy. So I was like, I'm going to do this series of people who I consider to be defenders, people who would stand up and be counted in support of other people or queer people or people of color. I felt it was needed. So I I just started to do that. And so every day I would sit there, maybe one, maybe two, possibly on a really good day, three, and I would have a meditation on this person who
Beautiful.
felt like a hero. And so it was really a great way to spend the summer.
And you spent the entire lockdown upstate?
Except for when I would come to town to go to Black Lives Matters protests, or I just came to town for things because I felt like I needed my body to be there to be counted.
Right. I think that your activism, I think, is, I mean, you support many causes, and I think that you're at the forefront of many movements. I guess.
Again, I'm a space holder and an amplifier.
Right. But no, but I think and that's which is beautiful because you do it beautifully. I mean, it's forceful.
But I'm not on the forefront, I don't think. I mean,
Right.
my body is on the forefront. I'm happy to put my body there.
Right.
But, I mean, my energy is being an artist, and I use my voice as an artist to amplify messages that I feel are important. But the people that are, like Gays Against Guns, Black Lives Matters, all the people that are out there really on the front lines fighting, the activists that are the lawyers, the people that
Sure.
are like, those are the people who are the real heroes. And I just try to draw people's attention to it.
Right. No, and thank you for doing that because I think your magnetism and just because people are, we know you and we love you, but also that you are, you're a conduit. You transmit, and whether it's being an organizer or being there, it matters. And thank you for that. I want to talk about another project, but maybe you want to
I'll do
sing
this
another song.
I'll do one song now, and then I'll come back. This song is called Driftin', and it's from a show that I did called The Drift. It was right after my romantic relationship with Nathan ended, and I was in my 50s, and I was now single as a really visible trans person who was on her hormone therapy, and was getting my boobs, and I was like, all of a sudden I'm like this different person in the world, and I'm single, and questioning whether I would ever be in love again, or and still don't know the answer to that question. But I was working with Scott Whitman, and we did this show. And one of the few times I've worked with a director, and I love him so much. And you introduced me to Scott. You and
Tim probably. Tim Hayland, yeah.
It was through you and Tim that I met Scott.
Right.
And so this show was based on the movie and the novella, which Nathan gave me, The Roman Spring of Mrs. Stone. And we found this song by Tim Buckley called Driftin', which I just felt was so perfect for that song, for that show. And I would read from the book where she would talk about drifting from one place to another,
Right.
and not really having any place to land, and the drift. It's like this beautiful, again, Tennessee Williams poetry.
Right.
And so this song is from that.
When there's wine in your belly, love's rhythm on your tongue, for you are a woman, and each man has been too young. But for me, you were a lover, gently under your covers. your sheets reek of others. Oh, I came here to hold and be held for a like a dream out on the sea. I'm drifting in between you and me. Every time I think about you, I can't remember what I said or what I did. Was it right or wrong? You know I can't remember. All I wanna be with you here with me. Last night I thought I dreamed in dizzy sunlight. I thought I heard your bare feet upon the stairs. Just like a fool, just like a fool. I'm drifting.
Wow. Thank you, Vivian.
Who needs applause?
It's just such a I mean, it's always a thrill to witness you in your performance, and I think that I'm sitting here listening to you, and I'm thinking, I mean, I can see where your history, your experience as I can see where Kiki has informed Vivian, but there is the enlivening of the material, like how you occupy the words and what you bring, and it's just extraordinary, baby. And I love you. It's
Thank you.
amazing. Is there anything that we didn't talk about? I mean, you mentioned the opera, but you didn't talk too much about it. Would you like to give us a
Well,
little
it
more?
was an amazing experience. I didn't really want to do it because I was going to have to miss doing my holiday show,
Right.
which is it's our favorite time. We love doing those every year, and we've been doing them for a long time. And so when she asked me to do it, I was like, I don't know. It's not really something Olga Neuwirth, who's an amazing composer. She's the first woman to be commissioned by the Vienna Staatsoper to write an opera, and she chose to do an opera version of Virginia Woolf's Orlando. And in the book, it ends on the day that she finished writing the book. It's like a tour through history, and ends on that day in the late 20s. I think it was 28 when she finished writing the book. And so Olga decided that when she wrote the opera, she would end the opera on the day of the performance. So she wrote it into the present and slightly into the future. And she created the role of Orlando's child. And who was a performance artist in New York in the 2000s. And so she asked me if I would be Orlando's child. So, of course, I wasn't in love with anybody in Vienna, so I didn't have a reason to go, really. But I said, I'm used to having saying my own thing. She goes, well, I'm aware that you don't really like to rehearse for long periods of time. And I know that you feel like you need to be able to speak. So if I'm going to write a section into the opera, that it will be own text where you can say whatever you want to say on that given night. So she kept saying yes to all my weird little demands that I thought would be a no. And so I had to say yes and go. And I was going to take my cats, and it was the whole thing. But anyway, I had it was very hard, and it was a lot of emotional labor being a trans person in a queer production like that, with not very many queer or trans people really in charge of it. So I had a lot of extra work to do to make it possible for me to be comfortable there. But it was all worth it, because every night I got to stand on stage and scream, "Fuck the patriarchy." And in a place like that, those words have resonance. And a lot of the young women, like one night, a group of the young women who were stage hands came up, and they were in tears, and they thanked me for screaming that in that place, because they obviously, being young women in that sort of like not a position of power there, they were constantly confronted with that. And so that made it worth it, that was amazing. And being in Vienna I really love that town.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
So it was a lot. I should write a book about it sometime, because believe me, I was journaling every night, and I had a lot of really great sex. I learned how to be a bottom. I was like, I surrender. So I didn't want to have to think about anything. So I just had these people come over, and I had great sex. And I'm glad I had all that sex when I did, because the chapel doors have been closed for the last year, haven't they?
I think they'll be swinging open soon.
I'm having a vaccinated tops only birthday party in May.
Thank you so much, Vivian.
Thank you. This has been a dream come true. I've always wanted to perform ensconced in your beautiful work.
Oh, thank you,
It was
Vivian.
a dream that I've had for a long time. These beautiful, beautiful artworks. And I've been so fortunate to be to so many of your shows.
Thank you.
And I can't wait till the next one.
Me too, when we're
When
free
is your
again.
next one?
Soon. I don't know when.
Great.
Next year, probably.
Next year?
Yeah, probably.
Well, that's not too far off.
No,
I
happens
thought
fast.
that, I can't believe. I mean, I'm just at peace with time at this point.
Me too.
To be honest with you, I'm not in any rush,
Right.
and I'm not really worried about slowing anything down either. I'm just, I feel like that's the time. It was painful to realize how alone I was, but I actually, when I would stop to just relax and say, don't feel like you have to judge yourself. Just lay here or get up or whatever. Once I started to make choices and intentionally work out ways of getting through it, it was really kind of a gift.
I agree. I mean, it's. Someone asked me recently, how's it going? I said, you're asking the wrong person, because I'm wearing rose-colored glasses, and I've been more productive than I've been in a long time, because I'm not getting on airplanes and flying anywhere, and I've just been focusing on work.
Yeah.
Yes, those. I wish I was wearing those.
Rose-colored Gucci glasses, darling.
But it's going into all of this over a year ago this week, I remember speaking with my friend Causeway, who works here with me, and she goes, "We're all going to artist residencies," and it's like, yeah, that's what we'll do.
Except for somebody
Yeah,
did
well,
a
not all
wonderful
of us
thing where
did
they
that,
put
right.
a meme up that said, "A pandemic is not a residency."
True.
In a certain level, yes. But I think that at a certain point, it was more than. I think people were feeling the pressure to feel like they were in a residency, like they were the artists that were going through this trauma, and in the middle of that, they're meant to create. Like,
Right.
I had this like fortunate situation that I had things happening. Like, I had that art show that I just
Right.
buckled down and did. If I don't know what I would have done. I don't think I would have been creative at all if I didn't have interactive outlets for that creativity, whether it was streaming or that art exhibition or whatever. If it was just into the void, I don't know. I don't know how I would have survived.
Well, it's interesting with survival, and where this wasn't our first plague either. Going through what we as a community, as a society, went through with AIDS. It was a complete different experience, and coming at us from in a different way, and manifesting obviously in different way. Horror, loss of life, indifferent government in charge of trying to support and to bring us through somehow.
No end in sight, no answers, no way of having any ability to make a plan or control, not knowing when you were going to see the people that you
all
love
that
again,
unknown, all that fear, all the unknown, all the imagination that goes along with that as well. So not forgetting all of that, but also as practitioners, as people who have purpose, who feel very necessary in terms of feeling responsible to be that placeholder, if you will. Mm-hmm. You activate that space. I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to not do that because you're locked in your house? Obviously not. But
well, when I got really down and I wasn't productive, the thing that I started to do again for the first time in a very long time is really read.
Right.
I've really been gotten back to the joy of reading,
right.
which has been a great gift. So I'm loving reading again. I was too distracted to read for the longest time. And now I'm reading, and it's wonderful.
I find that a lot of things that were taking up time or what I thought of as what I do, a lot of that stuff instantly started dropping away. I mean, and I felt like everything was just thrown up into the air, and then we could just see what we wanted to keep up there, or hold, and let everything else fall away. And I feel coming out of this, because I do feel that we're moving into that place of coming out of it. Mm-hmm. Less people are dying every day, hopefully, and we'll continue we'll be on that trajectory. But it's like, let's hope that we don't go back to what was before. Let's hope that we come out with reinvention and reimagining.
Well, I'm hoping that I'll be able to maintain the same level of survival discipline in as far as like self-care as I move into interacting with people again.
Right.
Like that's been something that I've had to learn and had to do
Right.
in a way that I never did before. And it's been I've taken up meditation and all of these different things to get me through, and they are wonderful.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to let go of any of that, but it's going to be fun to be with people again.
Won't it be nice to just have those?
Yeah. Kissing somebody
Kissing?
might be nice.
Whoa. Now you're talking. Vivian, I think that's probably all the time.
Yeah, it's
we
time
have.
to sing us out of here.
Sing us a song, please.
Okay.
Thank you again, Vivian. Love you.
On this midsummer night, everyone is sleeping. We go driving into the moonlight. Could be in a dream. Our clothes are on the beach. The prints of our feet lead right up to the sea. No one is here. No one is here. We stand in the Atlantic and we become panoramic. We tire of the city. We're tired of it all. We look around for just that something more. Could be in a dream. Our clothes are on the beach. The prints of our feet lead right up to the sea. No one is here. No one is here. We stand in the Atlantic and we become panoramic. The stars are caught in our hair. The stars are on our fingers. A veil of diamond dust. Reach right out and touch it. The skies above our heads. The seas around our legs. In milky, silky water, we swim further and further. We dive diamond sea, a diamond sky. We dive deeper and deeper. We dive deeper and deeper. Could be we are here. Could be we are in a dream. It came up on the horizon. It's a changing, look at the light. Climbing up the aerial, bright light coming alive. All up the aerial, bright light coming alive. Looking up the aerial. And all the time it's a changing, like now. All the time it's a changing, but then again, all the time it's a changing. All the dreamers are waking. Oh, like dawn has come, and the wine will run, and the song must be sung, and the flowers are melting in the sun. I gotta get up on the roof. I gotta get up on the roof. I feel I need to be up on the roof. I wanna be up on the roof. I feel I need to be up on the roof. I gotta be up on the roof. I need to be up on the roof. In the sun. And the wine will run, and the song will sung, and the flowers are melting. What kind kind of language is this? What kind of language is this? What kind of language is this? What kind of language is this? I can't hear a word they're saying. Tell me what they're saying. I can't hear a word they're saying. All the birds are laughing. All the birds are laughing. Come on, let's all join in. 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 I wanna be up on the roof. I gotta get up on the roof. I wanna be up on the roof. Come on, let's go up on the roof. We gotta get back up on the roof. In the sun. Matt Ray on piano, Nathan Carrera on guitar, Claudia Chopek on violin, Justin Vivian Bond, and Jim Hodges. Thank you, MCA, thank you to the kitchen, thank you to Queen's Lab for hosting us today, and to everybody who worked so hard to make this possible, and thanks.